We are good to go.
Boom, Cutler Cast, episode number 35. We're back, and we want to give a special shout-out to our Celsius. You guys looking for a clean energy drink, this has been our go-to. They actually have this cola flavor, which is like, I never had a cola-flavored energy drink before.
Yeah, that was the first time I had it. It wasn't that long ago. And I remember drinking it, and I was like, this would be a problem, because I drink like 12 a day then.
You know what's so funny, though? And we want to thank Celsius because obviously they've been supportive for us, not only for this podcast, but, you know, we've actually spent some time at the Arnold Classic at their booth, and you know, they're doing a lot with the fitness scene right now. Yep. But everyone that walks in our office drinks Celsius.
I know. It's too much. It's coming to the point now where people walk in and they're like burning through it like crazy. So I'm going to be hitting them up like,
Even our mailman's like, yeah, like you got a Celsius in there, so you know it's awesome. So
you can't see it from here, but there's a huge cooler, Celsius refrigerator on the other side.
You know, and obviously they have the heat, which is I think a little stronger, right? Than
it's got like 300 milligrams.
Yeah,
of
so that's obviously I'm not huge caffeine.
We just sounded like we just did a commercial.
I know. Well,
should we charge for that?
Yeah. No, shout out to obviously keeping us going here, but. So episode 35, we have a lot to talk about as we close in on another month of competition.
Yeah, so we just had a show in Orlando, and Hassan won back-to-back shows.
Yeah, so he won Puerto Rico, and he repeated a victory in Orlando, which was, what was it actually?
I think it was 2 weeks.
They used to call it the Europa.
Used to be a Europa, yeah. I know it was just like in Orlando.
Okay, so
show's time.
You know, the big question mark was the potential's always been there for Hassan. Could he nail the condition? And I think looking at the pictures in Puerto Rico, he was a little flatter, and now I think he was a lot fuller in Orlando and rounder, because we did discuss that. You know, he didn't have that wow factor. And I think now, you know, he's kind of found a combination. And the rumor has it he's going to UK Arnold.
I'm not 100% sure. I mean,
and
I think he is. I think he's on the list.
That lineup is going to be crazy. Like, is Nathan doing that show?
No, he's just going to do the Olympia. But what's his name is going to do it? Brad.
Okay.
Hollingshead. James.
Yeah.
James Hollingshead's going to do that one. So that's going to be a tough one, because James he's
a beast.
He's a beast.
Yeah, and he's hungry, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of other people. I know Martin Fitzwater's doing it too. Who's he's a youngster coming up, and
but Nathan's not doing it, and neither is none of the other UK guys.
And we'll be in the house. So shout out to the Arnold UK. Yep. I'm coming out there for the Sunday event.
Yep. I'm sure we'll go to the show Saturday night.
Yeah, looking forward to that. So we're going to go out and support that. But, man, he made a lot of improvements. You know, a big shout out to Hassan, because, you know, he's working with AJ Sims, and they seem to find the right combination. It'd be surprising if he actually goes and does September UK and then goes also to the Olympia in December.
Yeah.
I mean, peaking that many times.
It's a lot.
He did a lot of shows last year.
Yeah.
And if you notice, he didn't get necessarily better, right?
No.
But he still made it
to maybe they still want to just learn his body more before he goes in.
I was always scared to do that, man. I always I would peak around the 2 through 3 weeks around one competition schedule. But man, it was harder for me to dial in.
What's the most amount of shows you did in a year?
I think 03. I think I did I did Ironman, Arnold, San Francisco, and then I did Olympia, and I went on tour and I did 2 Grand Prix after, so 6 or 7, yeah.
And how did you fare that year?
I won all the shows the beginning of the season. I won 3 in a row, got second at the Olympia, and then I got second in the Grand Prix.
Tirani.
Yeah, that's the year I did against Fedorov in Russia.
In Russia, yeah.
And
everyone thought he was going to beat you guys.
Yeah. I mean, he was pretty legit, you know.
Yeah.
So funny. I was down in Florida last week. I took a like a short trip for Angie's birthday. And I ran into a guy. He stopped me in the hotel, and he's like, "I'm friends with Alex," and he called him Alex, and he was a Russian guy. And I said, "How's he doing?" And he said, "Oh, I was out there. We saw you in Orlando when Alex competed. He came back, if you remember, years ago at the Europa. He came back and competed, and he said, 'Oh, I saw you there.' But it's kind of cool that and obviously we have history, and they built that up as like the Rocky IV thing, like the Russians coming.
He was big, like big. He was like in certain poses, he was just as big as you.
I think he's successful training. Yeah, he had crazy legs, and I mean, he had the pec tear. I think that's what kind of held him back a little bit with the back training and the chest training. But we loom in this time of year, and and I was saying to you earlier, I want to talk a little bit about the Olympia, and I think you asked me, how do you feel like as you get to this time of year? And the funny thing is I wake up even now and I'm like, shoot, I got to start my prep.
Still? Because
this would be, today is July, what are we at, the 7th? 6th. July 6th. So this would be the first real week of my preparation. Because normally I would guest pose for Steve Weinberger early June, and then I would do Lonnie Tieper's event, which would be the West Coast Classic, which was a week or two ago, and then I would start preparation because I wouldn't travel after that. And I still get that mindset of, okay, I need to focus and buckle down.
Like after 4th of July.
Yes. So it's every time of year, because that's normally the Olympia would be in September, October. Now this year is a little different because it is in December towards the end. And it's crazy that this will be 9 years that I have not competed. And I really look at it as like I kind of stepped away in 2011 and I would zone in to start prep. It's crazy because my mindset was just.
So do you wake up some like now and like panic, like, oh shit, I got to be prepped?
Yeah. I actually had a dream last night that I was in preparation, and I felt like we were back in Venice. And you remember because you were there when we were filming
J to Z,
and we had this crazy idea, and it was actually Dave Borlay's idea, who, as a lot of you guys know, run their YouTube channel. And he's like, hey, why don't you train at Muscle Beach? Because everyone thinks when you go to LA and you go to Venice Beach, like Arnold trained at this Muscle Beach, which we don't really know if he did, right? We know they did acrobatics on the beach, and I don't know if they necessarily had this pit. I mean, they went to the Gold's Gym, which was in a closer location to the beach, but which is now someone's home, by the way. But they can't legally. I guess they can't change the signage out front, so it has to stay. Your front of your house still says Gold's Gym. It's really? A landmark. It's a historic landmark. Oh, yeah. So he had this idea we should go train at Muscle Beach. So he cleared it with Joe Wheatley over there, and we filmed the video with Mitsuru Okabe. You showed up. Couple other people, and we were training back over there and got to train for the first time.
You were afraid when you were doing lat pull downs,
I was going to break it.
Was going to snap because it was all rusty.
I was pulling that whole stack. If you remember, that was massive. I mean, I remember taking my shirt off and I did the vacuum. Remember, and with the front double, and I was full.
You need to repost that picture.
Yeah. And
300 pounds of the vacuum.
Yeah, it was 300 pounds, and I was guest posing that evening, and it's like we trained and we rushed to go to the West Coast Classic to guest pose, and that's part of the video J to Z. You guys can see that. Usually it's on YouTube or whatever else, but and I had this dream that I was back there, and I was back into the aura of those times at Gold's Gym Venice, man, because it was just, you can't recreate those times.
No.
There's a lot of, when I was pushing, I remember doing 170-pound dumbbell presses during that DVD, and I was, spending some time out there. And I remember I'd walk in that gym, and the respect that I would get, crazy, because that was my first year being Mr. Olympia, actually holding the title, and I was filming that as I started preparation. But the preps for me were, very, very dedicated. And as you know, I was training like multiple times a day then. It was just a very systematic approach.
Let's start. Okay, if tomorrow was day one of your prep for the Olympia, how would the day start?
The day would usually start with some sort of cardiovascular. So whether I was 20 weeks or 16 weeks, I always started like a full-on, okay, these are the meals I'm going to eat. I'm going to eat the 6 or 7 meals. And at the time, like during those days, I was training under Chris Aceto. So he usually structured a program where it was 6 meals a day. I didn't really get into eating more times a day until I started working more with Hani. I went to 7 meals, but Chris always had like a 2.5 hour to 3 hour window between each meal. So he would structure, the breakfast, and then I would usually, so I would do the cardio, which he didn't necessarily like me to do. He usually liked my metabolism to really start going, but I had this thing about doing the cardio where it kind of jump started me and got my mind in that box of like, okay, I'm going to start training for this thing. And I would eat breakfast, and I would go to the gym and usually train at least one session, come home, eat, take a nap, get up, eat another meal, and then I would go back to the gym and train again for another session. So I was trying to do like a split where I did 2 body parts a day, usually a larger one in the morning and a smaller one at night, unless it was leg training where I would do hamstrings in the morning and quads at night. But I would always try to put 5 hours based on what Joe Weider told me. So if I did a double split workout, there was 5 hours in between. And I was just under that assumption your body needed that for your nervous system to recover, right?
Okay.
And then I would go home and eat, 2 or 3 more meals, and then I would go to bed, and that would be the structure of the day. And I would try to keep a lot of stuff to a minimum. Like, like I said, I stopped the traveling, and I would start shutting off any outside noise. So I didn't leave the house to do anything social.
So let's start. What would be a typical breakfast on day one? Like if you remember.
20 egg whites, 2 whole eggs, 2 slices of Ezekiel bread, some oatmeal, probably like a big bowl of oatmeal. I would have like a cup of oats, maybe some honey on it. I'd have a cup of coffee at the time, and that would be it, pretty much.
And it would take you forever.
I say that's it. Like, no, the breakfast would
that's
go
how
down
much
quick.
you eat like in a day now.
Yeah. I actually, it's funny because I just started. I had this whole thing on YouTube where I did 100 grams of protein for breakfast because that's what I was eating when I actually calculated it when Dave came and shot me once. And I've actually cut out now having drinking the liquid egg whites. I just cook 2 whole eggs now, and then I have that with Ezekiel, and then I have actually I have grits now instead of oatmeal. For some reason, I don't know. I mean,
I've always liked grits better.
Grits just is more digestible to me.
Yeah.
And I think, I remember working with Hani, and he's like, it's some gluten issue with the oatmeal maybe, which caused me to have an upset stomach. And, it feels like cement sometimes when the oatmeal sits in your stomach.
Yeah.
And I know some of the guys use the packet of oatmeal, which has the sugar in it, but I was always against that. But that would be the typical breakfast, and then I would just basically eat chicken and rice, or I'd have 1 meal of steak maybe early on, and then he would transition me to fish for my protein, and I would stay with like white rice. I'd have pasta once in a while, even on prep, but it would mostly be lean protein. So egg whites in the morning, a couple whole eggs, and then chicken, turkey breast, or fish.
And you never really ate a whole lot of like red meat.
I didn't later, but early in my career, I pretty much only ate red meat. And I'll tell you the reason for that. I switched to organic like in the middle. Like when I won the Olympia, I actually did a blood type diet, which a lot of people don't know is, for 2006 Olympia, I actually switched to a blood type diet where I was O positive. So I ate more red meats and I cut more eggs out of my program, and I started eating the Ezekiel bread more.
Yeah.
And for me, it just worked well for me. It actually, I won the Olympia that year, and I was able to diet on a lot of calories and get lean at the same time. So, what people don't understand is like you go through a lot of trial and error, and sometimes you can't go back to the same thing, even if you gain a pound or whatever. And I was putting on pounds every single year. But like I was a creature of habit, But early on, I had such fresh meats. I lived in Massachusetts. I had a butcher, and I'd actually go and, like I said, I'd buy the cow. The cow would be hanging, and I would have, certain parts ground and steaks or whatever else. And I also had this place called Adam's Ribs, which was like a butcher shop, and I would go and buy pounds and pounds and pounds of beef or whatever once I stopped buying from the actual butcher. And he would totally hook me up. He gave me great pricing, and and then I was on a super budget, and that's what I would mostly eat is just ground hamburgers, super lean. I mean, it was literally no fat at all, but it was cleaner, and I wasn't able to, I started eating at Whole Foods, and to this day now, like I eat more red meat than probably I had in the past, in the form of bison.
Yeah.
And I remember going to Whole Foods and buying a lot of bison when I started the blood type diet. And since I started using Trifecta, I've been able to utilize bison, which I stopped eating pretty much when I stopped competing because of the, you can't really get quality meats from the grocery store, right?
It's hard. Very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've always noticed that with
going out to eat and whatever else, or
just like red meat never affected me. Like, some people eat it and they can only eat it here and there. I would eat bison all day, and it just doesn't affect my.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, I went to Barry's last night. Barry's, shout out to Barry's in Circa.
How was that?
It was good. I actually split a bison fillet with Angie, so it was an 8-ounce fillet. So we each had 4 ounces. And, because I don't eat a ton of protein now. I ate more carbs, so I had like French fries, and I had a baked potato. And it was amazing. It was great. Yeah. But you don't go to many places where you can actually order a bison fillet.
I was in Montana visiting Dana and Rob a couple months ago, and they took me to this restaurant, and I got a bison, I want to say a bison ribeye. It was unbelievable.
What would you say the difference, though, of a fillet, a regular fillet versus a bison fillet? Because I don't know if I could really. I know people say it's a little more gamey, maybe.
I didn't notice it.
It's supposedly leaner. Bison is supposed to be leaner
healthier.
Yes,
because it has less cholesterol. Yeah, bison or buffalo has the lowest amount of cholesterol of any protein you can consume, like meat protein. So if you're eating a bunch of chicken or a bunch of regular beef, it has a ton of cholesterol, but it has way less, so you can eat it a lot more. But I don't know. Whenever I would eat red meat, it just didn't sit in my stomach like some people. I could just go through it on a regular basis, and I could eat it 5 times a day.
I was never scared of the red meat, and Chris wasn't like, "Oh, you have to cut out the red meat." And he obviously there's natural creatine in there, and I mean, people always say the red meat is more beneficial to put on size.
There's more nutritional value.
If I could tell anyone, the viewers, the listeners, like you're a hard gainer and you're naturally pretty lean, I would suggest adding red meat in your program.
Yeah.
But just make sure you're getting good quality. I mean, that's the thing is don't just go to any supermarket because, to be honest, like it's really hard to get quality meat from the supermarket, depending on what it is.
I remember for years, Brian Shaw used to go buy ribeyes.
Okay.
And he bought a meat grinder, and he would grind them all up, and he would turn them into ribeye patties.
Yeah.
Because if you eat ground beef, it's easier for your body to digest than it is for larger chunks of steak. So he would go buy whatever it would be, 50 ribeyes, and he'd grind them all up in this massive meat grinder, and he'd have like 100 8-ounce patties or whatever, and he would just eat every couple hours. He'd eat 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, that's why I think I ate a lot of Hamburg in the beginning, and I would add honestly some little red sauce to it, or put little sea salt and pepper on it, and that's how I would kind of eat my meals. But for me to go out to a restaurant and order steak, it's very rare that I do that. So that's why Barry's. It was good that I actually got to go out and eat red meat. But so early on, I ate a lot of red meat, and then eventually it became like that low fat. The fish diet.
So if you let's go back to that. If you could, back when you were competing, get a lean bison, would you have ate more of that versus what you did now?
I think so.
Did you? Was it?
But
hard?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know if Chris would allow that.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if he would have been suggestive of that. And listen, when I worked with Chris, that was what was cool about it. Is like he was like, "Hey, this is what I think. What do you think?" And if I said no or yes, he didn't be like, okay, dude, you're doing what you're gonna do. Like, of course, I can't tell you what to eat, or how to work out or whatever. He said, I can be suggestive, but that was what was really cool about working with Chris. And, you know, even when I worked with Hani, like, you know, he was a little more of a dictator to what he thought. Like he didn't see the same vision. If there was a difference between Chris and Hani, you know, Hani believed in the kind of foods you ate made a huge difference, where I believe Chris did not. He was like, okay, just get like the macronutrient side of it. Mm-hmm. So if he's like, okay, I want you to reach X amount of protein and X amount of carbohydrates with as less fat as possible, where, you know, I actually added some fats in when I worked with Hani using almond butter or avocado. And, you know, he believed in red meat in order to, you know, kind of stunt metabolism a little bit. And, you know, the foods, we still are huge. He was big on the fish. He believed in the fish to thin the skin. So I worked with two, I feel, the best nutritionists, and they both had the theory that fish, when you got lean, and I think Phil can attest to that.
He always did. Yeah, he'd eat tilapia or orange roughy.
So I had this thing called the Hani Special, which was like this mixture. It was disgusting of fish, you know, tilapia fish, and I would put some mustard in there and some rice, and that would be like the Hani Special. Yeah, and we always joke about that because I hated it, man. And I said, you know, I would never eat fish again, and it's kind of like a, you know, twist that now when I go to a restaurant with you, often you say you eat like a lot of fish, right? Yeah. Because as long as I always ask the waiter or waitress, and I said, doesn't taste fishy, does it? And they're always like, of course, no one's going to say, oh, yeah, it tastes fishy.
Our fish sucks.
Yeah.
Get fired.
But if I smell fish, it's terrible. And, you know, I used to cook the stuff on the Foreman grill outside. I still have those huge Foreman sitting in my garage. I had like the biggest ones. I had every Foreman, George Foreman grill, and probably no one even knows. Does it even sell anymore?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I mean, now you have air fryers.
They had the huge ones. They were like an actual outside grill.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I had like a massive, it was long, and I would put the fish on it, and literally I used that so much in a prep that the Teflon would be peeling off. Oh, you know what I mean?
Why do you still have those?
I don't know. I just put them in the side of the garage, and here we are 9 years later.
You think they still work?
I'm sure they do.
Are they all sun damaged and stuff?
I'm sure they do. I mean, yeah.
There, that sounds like a good YouTube video. Jay's going to go cook fish for old time's sake on his disgusting grill.
Someone probably would buy those things. I mean, they set a lot of records on those things. But yeah, so to go back a little bit, so this time of year is very, it's like very reminiscent on prepping for the Olympia. And when I prepped, it wasn't just like, oh, we're going to eat, sleep, and train. You're asking me questions about the training and, you know, the program, right? Like how I ate. But man, the mindset, you know, we talk about the mindset and like what separates like a champion from just a good bodybuilder.
I think in general, in anything, what sets it apart?
Yeah, business.
The mindset, everything.
Like, because you need to be able to block all the, you know, we go back hater blockers.
Block all the haters.
That reminded you of that. You need to block out all the noise, block out all the negative, and focus on the positive, because you know there's a very, very dark place you need to go to, especially those last few weeks to prep for a contest, where you're like, okay, I need to zone in and really, really put this thing together. Mm-hmm. And I had to really separate myself from society, from sometimes friendships, relationships, and I would put myself in this dark place, and I would eat, sleep, and train, and there would be no other thing. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's what it really takes to be super successful. And I always kind of preach this, especially when I do these events and people say, you know, I have this or I have that, but, you know, I can't get to that point. And I tell people, like, you have to separate in order to be super successful. And it's kind of, you know, propelled me to different business levels too, because, you know, even when we travel to do these meet and greets and events, and, you know, I kind of like have to prep myself for those few hours that I have to give everyone the full attention, right?
Yeah.
Because it means so much. It can change people's lives. And I have the ability to turn a switch on and off that maybe no one really had to go to that level to do. And, you know, every day I went to the gym, and as much as I loved training, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it at all. a lot of times I sat in my car outside and said, okay, shit, here we have to go, right? And I had to find the energy. I had to find the ability, sometimes the motivation myself. And the loud music, driving to the gym, or the videos that I watched of my competition, the magazines that I read, a lot of the visions of me getting second or not even being called out in the early days on the Olympia stage was all motivation for me. But I always knew there was someone that was training as hard, or if not harder, or was coming up hungry. There would always be a possible new face that wanted to take my position. Mm-hmm. And the crazy part is like I was able to maintain top 2 in the world for 12.
We counted like 12 years or something like that. From 2001 till 2011. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah,
and you know how hard that is to block the hype, because back then it was like radio shows and magazines and whatever else they tried to create tension that this could be the year that someone else beat someone of position, right? Mm-hmm. And granted, I only gave a shit about winning the damn contest, especially being top 2 in the world for so long. And I never worried necessarily about the guys, but, we talk about like the Gunter Filet camps and, the Dennis Wolfs and the Gustavo Badells, the Dexter Jacksons, even Dennis James. I was just on his podcast and talked about this. Chris Cormier, I was battling him, Flex Wheeler, Kevin Levrone, Sean Ray, who were my early idols. And then, of course, chasing the ultimate, Ronnie Coleman. What motivation it was to watch him train in a dungeon in the heat of Texas, and they would do those flex photo shoots. Remember the crazy pictures of Ronnie? He'd have the tights, and he'd have veins through the tights. Yeah. How wild was that?
It was just on another level. And even people nowadays don't, unless you saw it back then, you just can't understand it.
What was your take on Ronnie Coleman back then?
I mean, I want to say a senior.
Who were you a fan of? Like, did you actually look at someone and say, "Fuck, this guy's like the ultimate"? Physique?
Yeah, I remembered seeing Ronnie when he won. It was a year after I graduated, and I remember because back then I was in a small town in the middle of northern Wisconsin.
Okay,
and when he won, I ended up seeing in the magazine. You couldn't call the local gym around me didn't know, so I didn't know until like a month later because they didn't have websites and whatnot. But
you followed it.
Yeah, I did. You couldn't. When I saw Ronnie won that first time, just seeing the pictures of him next to Flex, you could see why he won. But I never thought he would have progressed to what he did.
From 9th to 1st.
Just got bigger and bigger and harder and bigger and bigger. And you just never thought that when I first saw that first magazine, you would have never thought he would have won 8 times.
Do you think anyone's ever looked that good? In my 98 Olympia?
I still think his like 01 Arnold was his best look, but I just don't think you're going to see that again. Someone that's at that point in 98, I think that was as flawless as he could be. I thought he was a little
247.
He wasn't, but he looked way bigger. He had the small little waist. He had all the perfect lines. He had everything, and he was in crazy condition. Like, I don't know if we're ever going to see someone like him ever again. And I think nowadays, the guys nowadays, they see him and they think, I need to be big like that, but they don't let the process take place. They go, I want to go from this to as big as Ronnie was in a year.
Transition took a long time.
Yeah, he was, a college football player. He was still big then. I mean, he turned pro naturally. Yeah. So like he took the time to build that physique. So once he was there, it had a solid foundation. And a lot of the guys now don't have that foundation that a lot of you guys did have then. Everyone wants instant gratification now. So they'll see someone on social media looking a certain way, like, well, I need to look like that. I was having this conversation with Regan the other day where I've told him years ago, just add 3 to 5 pounds on a year, because he turned pro when he was, 22, 23? Slowly put the weight on, and your time will come. But you'll hear people criticize that, and they'll say, well, you're not you're not big enough. Well, what happens if he puts 30 pounds on? Oh, now you put all this weight on. Now your gut blew out. You screwed up. So no matter what you do, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
I know it's hard to listen to the critics sometimes.
Of course. So I've told him and I've told everyone else, just you listen to your coach and the people around you, and that's it. Just you got to ignore all this other white noise.
I hate that word coach,
Yeah.
It's different. It was different in my era. But I'll tell you a funny story. So Chris Aceto was, at the time, he was married to Laura.
Caval.
She was placing in the Olympia second. So I remember he sent me a text message back in I believe it was 98. They separated the Miss Olympia. It was like a few weeks prior to the actual Mr. Olympia. And wherever he was, Ronnie was with Vicky Gates at the time.
Yeah.
And he texted me. He's like, dude, Ronnie Coleman is literally drenched doing cardio at like 10 o'clock at night in this hotel gym, like serious as all could be. And then, of course, he ends up winning because we went back to I competed for my first pro show in 98 at the Night of Champions, and Ronnie won and Kevin was second. And everyone was kind of shocked because that's when Ronnie started to really have the come up.
Yeah.
And for him to beat Leverone, who had been like top 5 in the Olympia forever, people were shocked at that in a sense, but they knew Ronnie was coming into it. So that was in May, and then here we are in September in New York. He won his first Olympia and beat everybody. But I remember Chris hitting me up and being like, dude, he's drenched in this hotel, like doing a cardio, like with the incline like this. And like just moving. And he said, he did Ronnie said he did an hour in the morning, hour at night. And look at the condition that he brought.
Of course.
Because he was super dedicated. That was one thing about him, the same thing. He had a switch that it was like there was no world. And I saw that firsthand when I would travel with him later on and get to train around him or with him at these appearances. And he wouldn't care what time it was. He trained, and this was obviously off season, but the mindset is everything when you come to that level, right? So we all talk about levels and the champion mindset versus just the great competitor and being able to shut it on and off. And, you have to stay relaxed at the same time, but, you just can't leave any stones unturned, right?
Do you think the competitors in today's day don't have that same?
No, I think some of them do. I think when you think that, you think of like Nick Walker or Ian Valier or, I mean, listen, those are top 2 guys that fall. I'm sure Hadi Chupin trains super. I mean, I don't know, but
no, I mean, where they just block everything out and just go to that dark spot. Do you think a lot of the guys did it more back then, or is it probably equal?
No, I mean,
because there's
it's hard to say.
There's a lot more going on in people's lives now because of social media and obligations with all these contracts. And
I know. I just don't know. Yes, the phone. Anyone that's bringing a phone in the gym, they're already losing that concentration. If you watch back to the old battle for the Olympias, guys weren't sitting in there on their cell phones. You know what I mean? As much. Some guys were. I'm not going to say all of them, but like we trained and there was no distractions. And like I even said, I used to tell Mitsuru, don't talk to me, don't ask me questions, don't get my way. Just let me do what I do and get the raw footage. And, everyone wanted to be Dorian Yates. Everyone wanted to be like, oh, I'm so hardcore and like no one can be more hardcore than me. And I sit here and brag and say no one was more focused than me and no one had the tunnel vision like me. And I set my life up so I had every tool to be successful. So I had the tanning bed at home. I had all my cardio at home, every kind of cardio. I had gyms that I went to close to the house. I had the grocery store right nearby. I set it all up. So I was able to do this to the fullest. And I kind of like, I remember I bought the power plate and I was stretching in the power plate. I had the stretch coach. I did Pilates. I did kettlebells. I did the tissue work. Like I didn't miss anything. And that's what made me great. And that was part of the honing in on the ultimate prize. And do I see it now? No, but I don't pay as close attention as maybe you do, or you work with athletes. So you tell me if certain people are, if you say, Jay, that reminds me, who reminds you of myself?
It's God, it's such a tough thing to say, because when you say you didn't have a phone in the gym, and everyone does nowadays. Not some people, the phone can be a distraction,
and you have to, bro.
But you have to have it. Yeah, like you said, back then you could get away with it.
I'm not a lie. You were lying. You don't have to have it, but you should have someone there documenting.
Yes.
To be successful on your social media. We talk about the success of Regan or Chris Bumstead, right? They have film on them all the time.
Yeah.
How
would you have done it now? If you would turn pro now, would you be on your phone?
No, I would have someone do it. Mm-hmm. I would try to find someone that I could pay the least amount of money to do it, because I'd be broke.
Sounds like the same as it now.
Yeah. I'd be broke, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, so you can only budget so much, but I had a lot of great people around me doing stuff. I mean, listen, Dave Borlée was my hype guy when, I mean, you came to these things, what you could have held up. I mean, even today, like if I shoot, most of the content you see is you just working out and just, hey, take this video quick, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
But it's required by so much. Like when you do these deals now, how important is social media in the deal?
It's
posting.
It's very
like
important.
There's a certain number of posts, whether it's hard post, story post, Facebook, YouTube, link in the bio stuff.
It can be a bit much, but I always say this, and I know it might be a drastic analogy, but there's a lot of people that have a hard time getting the social media stuff done. And it's like,
because it's fucking invasive, dude.
It is, but would you rather go work a 9 to 5?
No, I mean,
and then go work out at night? Because there's a whole lot of guys that had to do that for years.
And a lot of people are introverts, like I was, man.
I'm a total introvert.
I mean, you don't. I mean, you put funny stuff. Yet you tell the story on your Instagram. You only put like jokes and whatever. You don't really talk to your community, right?
No.
And you have how many followers on Instagram?
25,000.
But you're that's not you to go, hey, I'm going to eat today. I mean, you posted last night maybe some food or something. Yeah. Did you post food last night?
I don't know if I did or not.
Okay, well, you sent it to me. So that's the kind of stuff I would see, like when we go for sushi last Friday.
Yeah, I'm an introvert. I'm an introvert that can play an extrovert, but I would rather, I'm a homebody. I don't like going out to those things. That doesn't mean I can't. I don't get like anxiety or freak out about it. I just don't like doing it. I'm an introvert.
And you wanted to be a pro bodybuilder.
When I was young, I did.
Yeah.
Then I realized my fucking structure sucks. So unlike everybody else that said, I'm going to try to push through.
I know, but
not
like,
wasting my time.
What if you would have been successful at it? Like, think about it. You would have opened up your life to,
I would have been the guy that got fired.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I'll find another way. I'm just not good at it. That's why I don't do it. I shouldn't say, could I be good at it if I wanted to?
Anyone can be good at anything if they're trained.
I just don't want to.
Dedicated.
You know? Yeah, no, I keep my life's I just keep my life off social media. I post funny shit, and I used to post a lot more. Now you just get to the point where you're just like, eh. But
do you get discouraged if your views are down is the question?
No, I could care less. No. I don't care about that stuff at all.
Yeah.
But I'm not like, that's not something that I need to be concerned with. You know, people don't come to me because of what I can do on social media. They come to me because of my skill set and what I can do to help develop for brands and for athletes and the access. They come to me for that. So my social media doesn't need. Now, I can show somebody how to do it. I can help them, and I'm sure I could help myself, but there's no need for me to, because people don't need to know me. And I know a lot of people, a lot of coaches or other people that do what I do, they feel this need to. People need to know me and people need to know what's going on. It's like, no, it's an ego thing.
Isn't it funny, though? I actually was great at social media early on before social media existed, because I put out videos every year.
Yeah.
That was just effort forward of doing that. I mean, granted, I made money doing it, right? It was a revenue stream, but I let people in my life, and I was actually good at letting people in to show what really went on behind the scenes. There was no fake shit there.
No.
And that's, I think, sometimes with the social aspect is, it's a lot of it's set up, and I think you have to have the right people capture the moments, right? Because everyone has emotions, everyone has the highs and the lows, And like I mentioned, to go back to the training, and whether I trained at Lake Mead Gold's Gym or Flamingo Sandhill Gold's Gym, or I went to Gold's Gym Venice, or I was on the road training at Bev Francis Powerhouse, like I had to zone in, man. I had to zone in and like to get under the weights that we push with the fear that, hey, any one of these reps could be a career-ending injury.
Your
like,
life, yeah.
And that's why I did all the extra stuff around the training that, you know, between the hydration with the fluid and the food and the tissue work and, you know, the stretching and all that. It was so crucial to create that one package to be able to stand on the stage and be the ultimate, right? And every year you were criticized, even when you won, because you can always be better or, you know, improve a certain area. The most important thing is to just be slightly better than the competition. And for me to, you know, reach that level where I was regarded as the number one athlete, you know, in bodybuilding in the world, man, you can't top that. And that's why today I still, like, I can't get out of that realm. Sometimes
why don't you make a comeback?
Yeah, right. But I can't get out of that. Like, this is that, I'm still in that, like, and that's why, like, lately, you know, we've been here, like, working on stuff.
Yeah.
I feel because I'm in that zone.
Yeah. I've noticed that in the last, like, obviously people don't know this because they're not around us, but we've all spent a lot more time
here
in the
like,
office.
And kind of
like every day.
Yeah, and it's a lot of verbal communication on possible
things we're
ventures.
working on. Yeah. I've always said that, you and I have been talking about this for years. I do think when there's an office setting, there's more chances of ideas to come about.
Not necessarily, not like office setting, but more like a collaborative group.
Yeah, that doesn't mean cubicles. Just even if you're sitting around a table,
meetings and
something could happen, and
and
somebody could say something, and it triggers something in your head. And hey, what about this? What about this? But if you're just sitting at home, which I've worked from home for my whole career, I've never had an office like that or a place to go. I just always worked at home because I'm just good at working at my own pace and doing it the way I do it. But I've noticed that since we've spent more time here, it seems like a lot more ideas
shit's getting done, yeah.
And the things we've brainstormed about, they're actually, I'm not going to say things are going to happen, but the steps to make things happen that we've talked about for years, the steps are being taken to make it happen. I mean, it might stop at any given point. You might say no, but instead of just talking about it, we're actually doing stuff. So shout out to you for having a place for us to come.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's just
it's kind of dumpy, but
yeah.
What a shithole we're in.
Well, the thing is you know, we talk about, you know, our certain guests, and obviously this podcast. And when I started it was kind of like, hey, we get inside Jay, and you know, when I was talking to you about that, I'm like, man, I just, you know, my mindset is in a different place right now, and it's just that time of year.
Yeah,
and I'm sure people around me, like the people that were social and whatever, dreaded these months because it was just like, I'm focused and that's it. And what was nice is I never had to leave the house. But if you remember, I used to train in the middle of the night sometimes. I would switch it around, and I did that as like to screw with the minds of the other competitors almost, because I wanted them to see, like in those videos especially, because Instagram didn't exist then, damn, this guy's training the night.
Yeah.
You know, what kind of schedule is he on? And you know, I remember just like it's hot this time of year in Vegas too, so it was a good time for me to actually focus on staying in and training, although the gyms were super hot, and I would do those walk-in lunges outside Decatur gym and 110 degrees, and I'd be dying out there, but it made me feel like I was working harder because I knew Ronnie was in that shithole just training away and training harder than everybody else. And
if you were starting prep tomorrow, how hard would it be for you to do the same thing you did then now? Like, how hard would it be? Because, you know, you go to the gyms, there's no Decatur.
I'll be honest. Our gym atmosphere, not atmosphere, but our gym accessibility here is better than it ever has been.
Of course. There's gyms everywhere.
I mean, we miss Flamingo Sandhill.
Yeah.
It was very far, so I can't lie and say that I trained there all the time. I mean, I did, you know, rip the shreds, 2004 Arnold prep there, you know, 2004 Olympia prep mainly there. But I went in cycles, and you notice this even now. I have this thing where I've been training up at Kilo Club to stay away from a lot of stuff where for a while we were training early mornings at Fit Club, and it seems like we're here most of the days now, right, in the office. But I feel I could, the atmosphere is almost better for me because I can choose a different. I used to laugh and say I could train a different gym, all body parts, 7 days a week. Now I can literally go 2 weeks and train at a different and not go to the same gym for.
You could go longer than that if you really, with all the LVACs and EOSs.
Of course, There's
a bunch of other gyms that we don't even go to.
And the equipment's improved still from 9 years ago.
Yeah.
It's improved. And, the training theories have improved. And, that hard head mentality of like you have to pound yourself in order to get in the best shape or build the most muscle aren't necessarily the answers anymore. And
so what I was thinking about when I asked that is, if you had the fame you have now, back when you would go to the gyms before, people would probably ask you for pictures.
Yeah, but they would wait.
But not everybody had a cell phone that had a camera in it back then.
You're right.
So somebody had to have a legit camera with them. So they really had to be a super fan. So imagine if you had to get ready now with the fame you have now.
Oh, I would hide for sure.
You'd have to go train at 1 or 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
When I first left Hong Kong and came back to Vegas in 2013, I always trained at like midnight or 1 in the morning, because back then there was EOS and there was some LVACs. There wasn't a bunch of the smaller, more private type gyms. But if you went at EOS or LVAC at any given time back then, there was 500 people in there. You'd be sitting there and you'd have to wait 3 or 4 people ahead of you to get onto a machine. But if I'd go at like midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning,
wide open,
you could go in there and train. So I would purposely stay up till 6 or 7 in the morning, go to sleep, and wake up at, whatever time, and then eat 3, 4, 5 meals. And I'd go to the gym at midnight or 1 in the morning. And you were able to get
it's better to move in the summer here at night, because obviously it's a lot cooler.
The sun's not beating
down. The Vegas nights, I talk about that all the time. But, it was just a different era. And I mean, to this day, I wanted to share that a little bit because I want people to understand like that bodybuilder mindset has not left me yet. I don't think it ever will. I mean, I'm more passionate about training now than I ever have been, because I actually enjoy it because I'm not beating myself to death. Granted, I'm not doing all the extra stuff like a lot of the tissue work. I barely get any at this point. I don't do Pilates or kettlebells. I mean, there's not much other activity I do other than kind of lift weights. I do my cardio twice a day, but I really enjoy the process, but the vision is still there, and it just is carried over. And I hope some of the guys that are prepping listen to this while they're doing the cardio or whatever else, and just understand that the tunnel vision mindset is the key to your success, and the consistency is the key to your success. And I posted something on Instagram story this morning about how my life, like I try to keep it as great as success as I've had, right? And you kind of laugh at this, whether I, was wildly more successful or I stayed what I am, my life wouldn't change that much.
Yeah.
Because I have habits, and I keep those habits like in the still simple atmosphere, hence why I'm still thinking, waking up the last 3 mornings, that holy shit, I got to start prep for the Olympia. Like I literally I've been waking up at 5 in the morning, and I'm like, oh, I have to catch myself. Like, this isn't happening right now. I'm not doing this.
I just picture you just waking up,
like
panicking, like, oh shit.
Is my weight good or whatever else? And hey, I miss it. I'm not gonna lie, I miss it. Would I ever get back to doing it? No, but I would. I would do this mini prep and like try to get in better. I mean, listen, I have a goal for next year. I turn 50 next year, so it's like I want to, like Michael Hearn does every year, right? He tries to challenge himself. I think I want to get my best shape ever for 50. I know Lee Priest just did it. He just turned 50 a couple days ago. So
could you get more shredded than you did when you're on stage?
I don't know. I don't know if the skin would lay as even, because I mean, that's the problem that I see, like especially like on my back here, in like this area. Like I just listen to biceps. I think it's just like my skin doesn't lay as clean as
it would, because you got to think at one point your muscles were a certain size, the skin was stretching.
I mean, not to say I got like stuff hanging down, but it's like I don't see the tightness of the 23 or 25.
Well, I mean, you got to think about it. You're 70 pounds smaller than you were, and the skin was tight then. Yes. And as That's just natural progression of
And
life.
it was so big for so long, but even though I still hold a decent amount of size, a more athletic size, but man.
So what I would, what I'm wondering is, if you were to prep now for a show, how would it be with the fans coming up to you? How would you handle that?
If I'm so nice. I feel I'm so nice.
So
now.
what I'm saying is, you'd be like, yeah, get a shot, get a shot, get a shot.
I'm so appreciative, but I would, what I did a lot of times when I would travel with a posse, meaning like people would go to the gym with me when I trained at the on hours, and they would kind of tell people like, hey, just wait till he's finished with his set, because it was apparent before.
Yeah.
Even if people just want to say, I respect you, right? So I would kind of have people monitor a little bit. I mean, Gold's Gym Venice, how crazy it was. Even back then, like it took me 20 minutes to walk through the front door.
Yeah.
Because every out-of-state person was there, and then every people that don't necessarily see me every day, until I started living there and started to actually be in the presence of that place,
on a regular.
Yeah, it started to be like, oh, we saw him yesterday, you know what I mean? So it wasn't so shocking to people.
Yeah. Well, you need to do another prep.
Yeah, maybe, maybe the viewers or the... What do you guys think? Comment below. You think I should...
maybe I'll do it too.
Do some sort of...
You
did one for a while. You did early on.
Yeah, I will. I will one day.
You fell off a little bit, so...
I just get busy with traveling.
I know.
It's just tough when you
travel. So, we have... I believe there's like a Portugal show coming up, so maybe we'll have to cover that.
There's a bunch.
Yeah,
I don't have them in front of me.
I know Tampa Pro's coming and all that.
Chicago.
So, yeah.
Yep, there's an Italy show in September.
Yeah.
2 Italy shows in coming up. There's Nice, France, UK.
So we'll cover some
Vancouver.
of this stuff, and we want to thank you guys for the engagement on the channel. Make sure you guys comment, or make sure you tell kind of what your story. Maybe there's some reminiscent times of when we connected.
If Jay was an asshole to
no,
you,
I'm
just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm saying, if Jay was an asshole, post down what he said. No, I'm just kidding.
And sometimes I wasn't as energetic or whatever, but as they know, it's like when you get focused on doing the deed, man, it's just like fuck, you just zoned in. So I want to thank you guys. Episode 35, guys. Shout out to everyone, and keep pushing towards your goals. And sometimes separate yourself. Maybe take this and say, I got to be a little selfish. I have to be a little selfish, and I have to focus. And I'd like to get more into my mindset as we get into it, because I'm sure there's questions arise on how I handle certain situations. And we just want to thank you guys for following along. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, share, and please comment below for algorithm.
And until next time,
we are out.